And I get a little emotional when I think about how easily I could have missed this. My name's Angela Domet, and I live out here with my husband, Jack, on an acreage just north of Wetaskiwin. I have two wonderful children, grown, married, and have four grandchildren. Before creating Champions for Life, I absolutely felt hopeless. My daughter had been letting me know that she was really struggling
Say no,
with
thank
her
you.
oldest son, Jacoby. He was 5, I think, at the time. I had no idea, although I did know he was a very active little boy. Here she was at home, working all day, coming home to this little boy that was absolutely driving her up the wall. He would stand at the cupboard and just scream out loud. I was appalled that he was even doing these things and just felt sick to my stomach because I had never experienced this. I didn't know what to do. However, the internet was going to be my best friend and I was going to find an answer. So I went on the internet and I found on Facebook this advertisement for positive parenting, and they were talking about buckets and I don't know. So I thought, well, this might be something that might work. So I paid for the course for Jessica, and she was very appreciative and she right away dove into it. And she's like, yeah, in time she's like, yeah, it kind of works a little bit for a little time, but it doesn't seem to stick, Mom. Like, it's not working, and this is what he's doing now. And sometimes he has an absolute meltdown for what seems like no reason. So I was again at a loss when I heard her saying these words, like their marriage was absolutely in trouble. Both her and John were parenting in two very different ways. They had a new little guy coming along, little Jax, and Jacoby was really struggling with his brother, kind of smothering him and yet needing more attention. It was a very unhealthy thing that was going on in their relationship. So I was just at a loss and I just didn't know there was anything out there. Again, I kept looking and trying to find something that made sense to me. I was listening to a lady, a Dr. Shafali, I think, or something like that on YouTube. She was talking about, this consequence type parenting, and it kind of made sense to me, but it seemed kind of weird. Anyway, I was sitting and I remember this clearly, how I found Creating Champions for Life. And I get a little emotional when I think about how easily I could have missed this. So I'm sitting in my office and I have Facebook on. All of a sudden, a Facebook Live comes on, and it's Bonnie and Tom. So Bonnie and Tom are saying things that I've never heard before about children. They're geniuses, trying to find their own uniqueness, saying, "Look at me." And when they were talking like this, I was going, that's my Jacoby. That's exactly what he's saying. Look at me. And that's when I knew I had to reconnect with Bonnie, who I had known from previous years as a business leader. She was my first mentor in business. And I was delighted that these guys had this going on. I had kind of known that they were doing something with kids. I didn't know what, but more than anything, I didn't have a reason to connect with them until now. When I did, it was just like you could just feel that this was the right path to go on. And I absolutely instantly reached out to Bonnie and said, I need help. The thing that is, I think, the biggest difference is the whole philosophy that your child is good and capable and that you come at it from that positive standpoint. And because I had raised horses, I understood that whole concept. You know, a horse is born with like an empty vessel, like a child, and what they become is a result of their environment and how they've interacted with the people and other horses around them. So it totally made sense to me that children would be in the same boat, born absolutely knowing nothing, and everything they become, Bonnie and Tom are just absolutely like that's their whole philosophy. they become what they live, their environment, how they are treated, the expressions on people's faces, the emotion that's around them when they do things. And the more that I found out about how they use these 12 principles that they've come up with through Tom's coaching hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of kids, I just went, wow, this just makes so much sense. Like, everybody needs to know this. And it just blew my mind. And then when you started seeing it in action, it was like a miracle. It's almost hard to remember how awful it was now, to tell you the truth. But I do remember after Jessica had reached out to me and said what trouble Jacoby was having. And we had him and his little brother here for an overnight on a weekend. And within about 2 minutes, this is before we found Creating Champions for Life. So I want to kind of tell you the difference. He had an absolute meltdown, a meltdown that I could not stop. I couldn't do anything for him. And he was kicking and fighting and screaming. And I can't even remember how it started or why it started. But it was scary for me because I didn't know how to stop it. And I didn't know what was going on in his little soul. And I can tell you that ever since Tom and Bonnie stepped into their lives, we have never had a meltdown like that since. And it was almost instant. As soon as he was kind of validated as a little human being, and for whatever it was that he did, whether it be good, bad, or otherwise, it just kind of shifted his whole outlook on himself and how people interacted with him. It was truly like a little miracle going on. When he did have a moment where he wasn't able to control himself, and that little spirit inside of him that we would call the victim came out at one point in the very first meeting that we had with Bonnie and Tom, and he had a meltdown in his room, and he went through a process that was just so incredible, where nobody had to tell him anything, dictate, nobody had to force him to do anything, but just sat and waited and stayed calm and waited for that victor to come out. It was incredible what I saw going on in his little heart and soul. He just started to realize that he is the one that's in control, and he would rather have the victor showing up instead of the victim. Once you kind of identified those two, it was almost like now he had control and he understood. And it was just beautiful to watch him come around. Yep. Yeah, it's just like night and day right now. We have the confidence and the ability now to grandparent, and Jess and John have the ability to parent their kids in a way they know it will give them the best outcome. It brings up these kids that are that have responsibility, that are proud of themselves, that are confident, that know how to react to the world around them. And are things perfect? No, because kids are always growing and always doing new things. But I can tell you that it is like night and day, the way these kids are right now. It's absolutely heavenly to have them come into our home now. I would say there's hope, number one, and that you do not need to give in to any of the ideas that some of these, psychologists and counselors and doctors have, that children need to be medicated in order to have them controlled. And I can tell you that for sure our little Jacoby would have been medicated had he kept down the path he was on. And all I can say to parents is, you do not need to go down that path. I have seen and seen Bonnie and Tom take kids that you would have for sure thought had no hope, and through coaching the parents on how to properly parent these kids and helping these kids become all that they have the potential to become, they have absolutely turned their families and their lives around. So do not give up hope on your kids, and know that there is a way for you to have that peace and that harmony, and that child that is in there, they're in there. It's just that they've been put into a box that they do not want to be in. And there's absolute hope for bringing that peace and harmony to every family in the world that struggles with the overwhelm that happens when you have one of those active, beautiful, smart, genius little kids that aren't the same as the one that just kind of lays down and lets you do whatever. Every kid is different. So, even in a family, you can have two kids totally different, and you might even parent the same. But the parenting for some of these kids has to be very special. And I truly believe that what Bonnie and Tom have done with Creating Champions for Life is going to change the world. Because think about it, we need to change the generations, and kids are coming up right now, and they have no idea how to parent the next generation. And all we can see in this world is that it's absolutely these kids being medicated is absolutely criminal in my view. I said to my brother the other day, think about it. If you took the dosage of drugs that they prescribed to these kids before you gave it to your kid, I'll guarantee you that there would be probably 99% of parents never giving their children those medications. Dumbs their brain down. They don't even get to know who they are as a person. Can't even imagine doing that to every adult, every parent, saying, oh, well, you're losing control, so let's put you on a medication. Can you imagine if that's what we did? Like, it'd be a nightmare. So we need to do something about the way the world's going right now, and Bonnie and Tom have got the answer. Creating Champions for Life is built on truth and principles that work.